Night falls heavy over the western bank of the Rhine, wrapping the world in a curtain of fog and silence, broken only by the low hum of engines. The men stand by their strange, boat-like trucks, joking half-heartedly to keep their nerves steady. They've been called the Duck Parade, a punchline in every mess hall from Antwerp to Aachen. But orders came down this morning, crossed the river before dawn. No bridges, no ferries, just their dukes, steel and rubber, floating on faith. Sergeant Tom Keller checks his map by a trembling flashlight, tracing the current like a scar. Private Danny Rhodes mutters about the cold, while Corporal Ellis tunes the radio that spits static like rain. Somewhere across the water, the Germans wait, invisible in the mist. The sound of artillery rumbles faintly, a reminder that the river isn't just a line on a map. It's a border between life and death. Keller finally whispers, "Mount up, boys. Let's see if the ducks can swim with ghosts." The ducks ease into the river like reluctant animals, their wheels slipping beneath black water until the current takes hold. Engines hum low as soldiers huddle close, listening to the muffled churn of propellers beneath their boots. The Rhine smells of oil and iron, carrying the taste of fear on every breath. Keller keeps his eyes fixed on a faint lantern across the bank, their landing zone. Though every few seconds, flashes of light reveal the haunting silhouettes of ruined bridges. Rhodes grips the side of the DUKW, knuckles white, muttering something about how no one back home will believe they floated across a river in a truck. The fog thickens, cloaking them in a ghostly veil. Behind them, Helen's voice crackles through the radio. "Keep formation. If we scatter, we die." For the first time, no one laughs at the ducks. Halfway across, the river begins to fight back. A hidden current catches one of the ducks broadside, spinning it slightly. Mendez curses, shouting over the roar of water as he leans on the wheel. Keller grips the rail, barking orders, his voice swallowed by wind. The fog closes in so thick that even the nearest vehicle vanishes into gray nothingness. Ellis fiddles with the radio, trying to reach Helen, but all that answers is a hiss of static and a burst of faint German chatter. Fear crawls up their spines. Rhodes can't help but imagine eyes watching from the far shore. Then, a flash. Artillery on the eastern bank, and the first shell lands behind them with a thunderous bloom. Water crashes against the hull, spraying the men. The Rhine, once silent, is now awake and angry. The first DUKW veers off course, drifting dangerously toward a cluster of sunken bridge debris. Keller orders Rhodes and Mendez to swing wide, engines groaning under the strain. Bullets begin to snap across the surface. German machine guns have found them. The men duck instinctively, helmets ringing with near misses. Helen's voice breaks through the radio, calm but urgent. "Keep your bearings. Push through. We're halfway." Keller feels the weight of every life aboard pressing down on him as he scans the bank ahead, praying for solid ground. Then, out of the fog, faint outlines emerge. Shattered buildings and trees on the eastern shore. "That's it," he whispers. "That's Germany." But the river has one more test to give. The lead DUKW grinds against the muddy eastern bank, tires sinking deep before finding traction. Keller leaps out into knee-high water, hauling the bow rope as shells crash behind them. The rest of the convoy follows, engines roaring, men shouting, the Rhine behind them erupting in fire and steam. One by one, the duck trucks crawl up onto solid land, soaked, battered, but alive. Rhodes collapses against the hull, laughing breathlessly. Helen's voice cuts through the din. "You made history tonight, boys." Keller looks back across the water where the fog still hides the west bank. The ducks sit half in water, half on land, like creatures born from both worlds. For the first time, no one calls them a joke. They've crossed the river, and with it, the line between mockery and legend. Morning breaks over the eastern bank like a reluctant confession. Smoke from the night's bombardment drifts low, turning sunrise into a dirty orange smear. The men work in silence, shoveling mud from the ducks and checking for leaks. Keller moves among them, every step heavy, knowing they're far from safe. The radio crackles. Helen's voice again, clipped and urgent. "We've got wounded infantry 2 clicks north. Flooded fields. You're the only transport that can reach them. No maps, no air cover, just the ducks and their luck." Rhodes stares toward the horizon where broken farmhouses lean like gravestones. "We just got here," he mutters. Keller doesn't answer. He climbs aboard and starts the engine, the sound echoing over the ruined landscape. Duty doesn't wait for clean hands or dry boots. The ducks turn east again, deeper into enemy country. The convoy rolls forward through knee-deep floodwater that used to be farmland. Sunken fences and drowned hay bales drift past, the current whispering around their tires. Keller drives with both hands locked on the wheel, his eyes scanning the gray water for mines. Rhodes sits beside him, clutching a canteen and staring at a floating door that passes like a coffin lid. Somewhere ahead, faint cries for help rise over the wind. The stranded infantry. When they finally spot them, the sight cuts deep. A handful of mud-covered soldiers huddled on the roof of a barn, half submerged, waving weakly. "Looks like the ducks got work," Mende mutters through the radio. Without hesitation, Keller turns the wheel toward the sound. The ducks breaking the current like slow, determined beasts. They reach the stranded soldiers just as artillery begins again. Sporadic, searching fire. Keller jumps into the waist-deep water, motioning for Rhodes and Ellis to help pull the wounded aboard. The men they rescue are in rough shape, bandaged, shivering, eyes hollow from too many nights on the wrong side of hell. One lieutenant thanks them in a cracked voice, staring in disbelief at the floating truck that saved him. Keller just nods, hauling another body over the rail. Shells fall closer now, sending waves across the flooded field. The ducks groan under the added weight, engines whining, but they hold. "You see," Keller shouts over the thunder. "They're not jokes, they're wings." The men grin through the fear. For a moment, the ducks fly. The return trip is agony. The added weight slows them, and the Germans know their range now. Mortar shells splash closer with every mile. Helen's voice stays steady over the radio, calm, measured. Her tone the thread holding them together. One DUKW takes a hit near the rear. Shrapnel rips its side, water gushing in. Mendez curses, veering toward it. Without orders, Keller circles back, ropes in hand. Together they lash the wounded truck to theirs and push forward, the 2 crafts grinding against the current like chained brothers. Rhodes prays under his breath. Ellis keeps the radio alive with dying batteries. Somehow they keep moving. Not fast, not graceful, but unbroken. By afternoon they reach solid ground again, battered but intact. The rescued infantry are unloaded onto muddy banks where medics wait, disbelief on every face. The ducks idle in a shallow pool, their engines hissing steam like tired beasts after battle. Keller stands beside his truck, soaked and silent, watching the wounded being carried away. Helen approaches, helmet under her arm, her voice softer now. "You brought them home, Tom." He nods, but his eyes are on the river, its surface smooth again, as if none of it ever happened. The laughter that once followed them across bases and camps feels far away now. The ducks have proven themselves, but the war is not done. Keller looks toward the horizon where thunder rolls again. The next storm waiting. "We'll go where the water takes us," he murmurs. And the ducks, faithful as ever, wait in silence. The convoy pushes east under a low gray sky, their wheels grinding through streets that used to be cobblestone, but are now rubble and fire. The smell of smoke and damp stone fills the air. The ducks rumble past ruined storefronts, windows shattered, bicycles rusting in doorways. Keller drives with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping a cigarette that's gone out hours ago. The radio brings word of an infantry platoon pinned down in a church square ahead. No tanks can reach them through the debris. "Looks like we're the cavalry," Keller mutters. Helen answers over the static, Then ride, Sergeant. The men laugh softly, but the humor dies quick as the first gunshots echo down the narrow streets. The first ambush comes from the church tower. A machine gun bursts to life, shredding brick and air. Keller slams the brakes, yelling for everyone to take cover. Bullets ping off the DUKWs' steel panels, sparks flying like angry fireflies. Rhodes dives behind the dashboard, heart hammering, while Mendez returns fire through the open back. Ellis hunches over the radio, calling for artillery support, his voice barely audible over the chaos. They're zeroed in on the tower, Helen says, her DUKW skidding to a halt beside them. Keller glances at the DUKW's hull, then at the trapped infantry ahead. Use the ducks as walls, he shouts. Well, shield them in, and like that, the joke vehicles become armor. Minutes blur into hours. The ducks, dented and burning in places, hold the line while infantry crawl behind them toward the square. The sound of prayer mixes with gunfire from the church ahead. Keller wipes blood from his temple and leans against the wheel, every muscle trembling. Rhodes whispers a curse, watching smoke rise from the tower where German machine gunners still fire blindly. We can't stay here, Helen radios, voice tight. Keller stares at his cracked windshield, then at the small photo of his wife taped to the dash. We want, he replies. We'll move them forward. He starts the DUKW again, its engine groaning like a dying animal, and drives it straight into the fire. They breach the square, the church looming ahead like a wounded giant. Keller's DUKW skids sideways, blocking the open courtyard so the infantry can charge through. Mendez leaps down, dragging a wounded soldier to cover. Ellis screams into the radio for mortar support. The sound of a single explosion follows, and the church tower collapses in a roar that shakes the ground. Dust covers everything. For a long, endless moment, no one moves. Then, slowly, the firing stops. The square is silent, except for the crackle of flames and the low whine of a dying engine. Keller sits behind the wheel, breathing hard, staring at the ruined church. That's one less gun, he mutters, voice hoarse. One less ghost. When night returns, the village is theirs, or what's left of it. Keller's crew gathers around a makeshift fire beside the ducks, the flicker of flames dancing on battered steel. The trucks look like survivors themselves, riddled with holes, streaked with grime, but still standing. Rhodes breaks the silence first. We were supposed to deliver supplies, he says quietly. Mendez smirks, passing him a dented flask. Guess we delivered freedom instead. Helen sits across from them, helmet off, staring into the fire. No one will ever laugh at the ducks again, she says. Keller nods, the light catching the tired lines on his face. Around them, the sound of the river hums faintly in the distance, carrying whispers of the ghosts they've left behind. The morning after the fight, the village lies quiet, smoldering in the mist. Keller walks through the wreckage, boots crunching on glass and brick, his mind echoing with the screams that have finally stopped. The ducks sit like wounded animals in the square, steam rising from bullet-riddled hulls. Rhodes is asleep against a wall, Mendez patching holes in the side with salvaged metal. Helen writes her report by the fire, her pencil trembling with fatigue. The radio crackles faintly, a distress call from across the valley. A bridge collapse. Dozens of wounded trapped. The nearest unit is miles away. Helen hears it too. Command says stay put until resupply, she murmurs. Keller looks at the river winding beyond the ruins, and then at his crew. If we wait, he says softly, they drown. They roll out before dawn, ignoring the radio's constant crackle of reprimands. The valley road is a nightmare of mud and wreckage. Every mile takes them deeper into smoke and silence. The bridge ahead had been shelled to ruin during the night. What's left of it juts from the river, like broken ribs. Beneath it, men cling to the wreckage, medics waving frantically. Keller doesn't hesitate. Rhodes, Mendez, we go in. Helen's voice wavers through the headset. Command will court-martial us for this, Keller replies, if they're alive to try. The ducks lurch down the embankment, water swallowing their wheels. For the second time in as many days, the ducks swim toward ghosts. The current is stronger than before, dragging debris and bodies alike downstream. Keller fights the wheel as waves crash against the bow. Rhodes spots a soldier clinging to a section of railing and dives without thinking. Mendez curses and throws him a rope. The water swallows them both for a second, and the whole crew holds their breath until Rhodes resurfaces, hauling the man toward the duck. Helen's voice cuts through the chaos, guiding the second truck closer to the wreckage where more survivors wait. Bullets whistle from the far ridge, German stragglers picking off the living. Keller glares at the sound and yells, "Get them aboard! Now!" The ducks turn, churning water red beneath them, engines screaming against the current. By the time the last survivor is pulled aboard, the ducks are taking on water. Keller orders everyone to bail with helmets while he keeps the engines roaring. The ridge fire intensifies, bullets pinging off metal. Helen maneuvers between the two trucks, shouting coordinates for friendly artillery. Mendez, bleeding from a shrapnel cut, grins through clenched teeth. "Still think these ducks can't fly?" he yells. Keller laughs to spite himself. They're flying low today. Then the artillery hits, not theirs, but German, and the bridge collapses completely behind them. The shockwave slams both ducks forward, throwing Rhodes off balance. Keller grabs him just before he goes overboard. For a heartbeat, time freezes. Water, smoke, shouts. Then the river swallows everything in thunder. When the smoke clears, the ducks are drifting in silence downriver, engines coughing, decks littered with wounded men. The air smells of cordite and burnt oil. Keller sits behind the wheel, staring at the riverbanks sliding past. German countryside, ghostly and still. Helen radios in, her voice calm but shaking. Rescue successful, casualties minimal. The command post doesn't answer for a long time. When it finally does, the voice is cold. "You disobeyed direct orders, Lieutenant Graves." Helen glances at Keller, who just nods, a tired half-smile on his face. "We did what we came to do," he says quietly. Rhodes leans back, eyes half-closed, whispering, "They'll never understand, will they?" Keller shakes his head. They don't have to. The ducks float onward, carried by the same river that once divided worlds. 3 days later, they return to base. If you can call a cluster of tents beside a smoking rail yard a base. The ducks roll in, caked with mud and patched metal, looking more like relics than machines. Keller's unit is silent as they dismount, faces hollow from exhaustion. A jeep waits near the command tent. Helen walks straight to it, jaw tight, as 2 MPs step forward. "Sergeant Keller, Lieutenant Graves. Command wants a word," one says. Keller nods. He expected this. Inside the tent, a colonel with eyes like cold glass listens to their story without a flicker of emotion. When it's done, he leans back. "You disobeyed a direct order." Keller answers quietly, "Yes, sir." To save 31 men, the colonel's silence is longer than any shout could be. "That river doesn't care about heroes," he finally says. "It only takes them." Interrogations blur into paperwork into silence. The crew spends the next day confined to camp, their ducks lined up like prisoners awaiting sentence. Rhodes paces restlessly, muttering that heroes shouldn't need permission to save lives. Mendez, always the joker, says nothing now, just sits on a crate, turning a spent shell. casing in his hands. Keller spends most of his time staring at the river beyond the trees, the same Rhine they crossed what feels like years ago. Helen joins him quietly. "They'll make examples of us," she says. Keller doesn't answer right away. "Maybe," he finally replies. "But the men we pulled out, they'll remember." She nods, eyes glistening in the fading light. "That's not much comfort." Keller looks down at the water and murmurs, "It's the only kind that lasts." By dawn, word spreads through the camp. The colonel's recommendation is court-martial, but higher command has yet to decide. Meanwhile, infantrymen from the rescued platoon arrive, bandaged, limping, alive. They seek out Keller's crew, shaking hands, saluting, some even hugging the men who saved them. One soldier presses a metal ribbon into Keller's palm, whispering, "We'd be ghosts if not for you." Keller can't meet his eyes. When the man leaves, Helen says softly, "You think you did wrong, don't you?" Keller shrugs. "Sometimes right looks too much like it." The laughter of the wounded drifts through the camp, strangely out of place against the ruin around them. Later that evening, an officer delivers the verdict. No court-martial. Official reprimand only. Command needs every working man and every duck for the final push toward Berlin. The news hits like a strange mercy. Mendez laughs first, a deep, relieved sound that echoes through the camp. Rhodes throws his helmet into the air, shouting, "Guess we're too stubborn to punish." Helen smiles faintly, but Keller just exhales, shoulders sagging under invisible weight. "We're not off the hook," he murmurs. "Just borrowed time." He looks at the ducks lined up under floodlights, patched, weary, but ready. "They're calling us forward again tomorrow," Helen says. Keller nods. "Then we go, same as before." That night, Keller can't sleep. The river murmurs nearby, whispering of the men who never made it across. He walks down to the bank where the ducks rest, their hulls reflecting starlight like tired sentinels. Helen finds him there, her voice soft in the darkness. "You think too much, Tom." He smiles faintly. "Someone's got to." She joins him, looking out over the water. "We'll be in Berlin soon," she says. Keller nods. "And after?" "After," she answers quietly. "Maybe we learn how to live again." The wind moves across the river, carrying the faint echo of engines long gone. Keller glances at the ducks, at their patched steel, their faded names, and whispers, "They laughed at the ducks, but they'll remember them." The sky over Brandenburg burns red with artillery fire. Smoke drifts low across what's left of the fields, and through it, the ducks crawl forward like ghosts from another war. Keller drives in silence, eyes fixed on the horizon where Berlin's glow paints the clouds. Rhodes hums a tune to break the tension. But it dies on his lips when they pass a convoy of wrecked jeeps. Helen rides in the lead truck, her voice steady through the radio. "Command wants us to ferry ammo and wounded across the Spree. The bridges are gone." Keller nods to himself. Another river, another crossing. He glances at the bullet scars along the DUKW's hull. "Guess we were built for water and war," he mutters. Mendez chuckles dryly. "And hell in between." By midday, they reach the Spree. What once was a calm, lazy river now churns with broken timber, tank treads, and smoke. The bridges are twisted ruins. On the far bank, pinned infantry signal with flares. Keller's crew unloads the ducks quickly. Crates of ammo, stretchers, fuel, drums, everything needed to hold the last line before the capital. The current looks faster than any they've faced, but Keller only says, "We've done worse." Rhodes forces a grin. "Yeah, with less sleep." Helen nods toward the water. "We'll go in two at a time, no mistakes." The sound of artillery rolls over the water like thunder. The ducks line up once more, weary, scarred and faithful. They enter the spree under fire. Mortar rounds splash around them, shaking the ducks like toys in a storm. Keller grips the wheel, eyes locked on Helen's truck just ahead. A shell lands too close. The blast rocks the water, drenching them in spray and mud. Mendez yells, "We're taking water!" Keller glances down. A crack along the hull. He slams a boot over it, shouting for Rhodes to man the bilge pump. "Keep her afloat!" Helen's voice crackles over the radio. "We're halfway. Don't stop." The air smells like cordite and fear. The ducks churn forward, each wave a heartbeat, each breath a gamble. Keller can almost hear the Rhine again, the ghosts cheering them on. When they reach the opposite shore, the ground is nothing but mud, barbed wire, and smoke. Keller's DUKW grinds against the riverbank, the engine choking but alive. They unload fast. Ammo crates, wounded, fuel. Everything they carried now scattered across the chaos. Rhodes helps a medic drag a bleeding man toward cover. Helen's voice cuts through the noise. "We've got to go back. More waiting on the west bank." Keller looks at her, incredulous. "We just made it." She nods. "And they won't." He stares for a moment, then laughs. Not from humor, but disbelief and pride. "Then let's give them one more ride." The ducks turn back toward the fire, engines roaring through smoke. They make one final run across the spree as daylight fades into a red-black dusk. The firing slows, distant, scattered, like the war itself is running out of breath. Keller feels it in his bones. This might be the last time the ducks swim. Rhodes leans against the side, humming softly again, the same tune he started that morning. Helen sits on the edge of her DUKW, staring at the sky instead of the river. "Almost over," she whispers. Keller nods, eyes wet from wind and something deeper. The city ahead burns quietly, its reflection trembling on the dark water. When they reach the shore, no one cheers. They just sit there for a long time, watching the river. The ducks float still, engines silent, their work, and the war nearly done. The guns fall silent before sunrise. At first, the crew doesn't believe it. They wait for the next shell, the next burst of machine gun fire, but none comes. The air feels heavy, unreal. Birds begin to sing somewhere beyond the smoke. Keller sits on the hood of his DUKW, staring at the horizon where the glow of Berlin fades into soft morning light. Rhodes emerges from the waterline, helmet dangling in one hand, face blank. "Is it really over?" he asks. Helen lowers her radio, the faint hum of static dying as she turns it off. "They say the surrender's signed. No one cheers. No one moves." Mendez lights a cigarette with shaking hands and exhales into the quiet. Keller finally murmurs, "Guess the ducks made it to the end of the world." By mid-morning, soldiers line the riverbank. German prisoners, Allied troops, medics, all mingling in disbelief. Keller's crew helps ferry the last of the wounded across one final time. But this time there's no shouting, no gunfire. Just quiet cooperation and the soft murmur of the current. Rhodes watches a German boy in tattered uniform offer his canteen to an American medic and whispers, "They look just like us." Helen answers, "They always did." Mendez starts humming the same tune Rhodes once sang, slow and almost peaceful. Keller looks out over the water and feels the weight lift, only to find the emptiness beneath it. "Funny," he says softly. "I don't know what to do if I'm not crossing something." That evening, the ducks are ordered to be turned in, repurposed or scrapped. Keller stands beside his, running a hand over the dented hull. It's strange to think of them as things that can be melted down after everything they carried. Rhodes packs his gear in silence. Helen signs off the final logbook with shaking hands. Mendez scowls at a quartermaster trying to inventory. "His truck. This one's got more lives in it than your whole supply chain," he mutters. Keller says nothing, just tucks the map of the Rhine into his jacket pocket. If they ask what we did, he tells his crew quietly, "Tell them we floated through hell and came out dry." No one laughs, but everyone smiles. As darkness falls, the crew shares one last fire beside the river. They say little. There's nothing left to prove, nothing left to fight for. Keller passes around a battered tin cup of whiskey salvaged from somewhere. Rhodes asks what they'll do next. Helen says she might teach, maybe write. Mendez jokes about opening a garage. Keller just stares at the water, quiet for a long time. "I think I'll go home," he finally says, "and never complain about rain again." They laugh, soft, tired laughter that fades into the crackle of the fire. Above them, stars return to a sky that's been black with smoke for too long. At dawn, Keller wakes alone by the river. The camp is quiet, the others still asleep. The water moves slowly, reflecting the pale sky. He walks to his DUKW, the one that carried them through the Rhine, the floods, the fire, and rests a hand on the cold metal. "Thank you," he whispers. It's not a prayer, but it feels like one. He climbs up one last time, sits behind the wheel, and looks out across the calm current. In the stillness, he hears the echoes: engines, laughter, gunfire, ghosts, fading into peace. When he steps down, the first sunlight hits the hull, turning it gold. The river moves on, carrying the memory of every man it ever tested. The ducks, the men, the ghosts, all part of the same water now.